I've bought a new camera. This is the OM system OM-1 Mark II, and I'm currently shooting on Nikon. I've got a Nikon Z8 and a number of lenses. This camera is either going to be something I use in addition to my existing kit, or I may completely replace my Nikon gear with this camera and a number of lenses. I'm out to do a landscape photography shoot today, and at the end of this video, based on my experience today, I'm going to decide whether I'm going to completely switch to this system or just use it in addition to my Nikon Z8. My name is Wayne Robertson and I'm a landscape and wildlife photographer based in Scotland. I want to touch on as briefly as possible why I've bought this camera. I've bought this camera and lens with my own money. That's the only OM system gear I've got at the moment. And I just want to cover why I've bought the camera and why I'm looking to either use it at times instead of my Nikon Z8, or possibly use it every time I'm out doing photography instead of my Nikon Z8. It's quite simple. I won't go into too much detail, but I've got a long-term injury which I'm struggling to get rid of. I'm in really good health. It's nothing serious, but when I'm out walking, if I don't carry a lot of gear, I get on a lot better. There's basically very little to no problems. But when I'm out carrying a lot of gear, and for example, if I'm doing wildlife photography, I could be carrying 2 lenses, 2 tripods, additional camera and audio equipment and so on if I'm making videos, I start to feel a bit of pain, and it's becoming a bit of a problem, and it's something I'd really like to try and get rid of as much as possible. So to not go into more and more detail, that's keeping it as simple as possible. I want to reduce the weight of my kit. Now again, trying to keep this brief because it could be quite boring for me and for you as the viewer. I'm not going to go into everything I consider doing. I just want to quickly say that over the last 3 weeks I've considered every option. I've looked at getting lighter lenses for my Nikon. I've considered absolutely everything. I've looked at what's available on other camera systems, other companies as well. And you may be thinking, oh, why do you not get this lens from Nikon and that lens? Believe you me, I'll have thought of whatever you're thinking, and there'll be reasons why I've not really thought that was the best choice for me. At the moment, I've only got the camera body, the OM-1 Mark II, and the 12 to 40mm lens. And what I'm wanting to do today is just go out, do some landscape photography, get some in-field time with this camera, see how it feels to use, do I like it, see how I get on shooting today. There's a lot of nice features in this camera. I probably won't use all of them or many of them today, but I'm also wanting to capture my own images, edit them, see how I feel about the files, see how I feel about the image quality, and I'm also going to do some prints. So if this camera is good enough for my needs and I think I'm happy with the image quality and I can print at the sizes that I'm regularly printing, I may consider completely switching, but if I'm not quite sure or not quite happy, it's probably just going to be something I use when I'm going on very difficult hikes and I feel I'm going to struggle a bit in pain and I want to go with as light a kit as possible. So at the end of the video I'll make a decision. Now I do landscape and wildlife photography, and today this is purely doing landscape photography. I just want to look at the image quality and see if it's good enough for my needs. I'm not going to compromise. If I'm not really happy with it or unsure, I won't switch. It needs to be good enough for my needs. You may think, well, why are you not testing it for wildlife? Well, I've done so much research. I'm really confident that the autofocus is going to be good enough for my needs, and I'll be happy using it for wildlife in terms of how the camera functions, as long as the image quality is good enough. And I just want to take a few of my own images today and see how I feel about that. Online you can do so much research. You can look at examples of noise and so on. I'm fully aware of all the differences between a micro four thirds sensor and a full frame sensor that I've got my Nikon. I'm aware of the megapixel differences as well. I know exactly, you know, what comes with getting one of these cameras in terms of some compromises, but there's a lot of benefits as well. And if the image quality is good enough for me, then it's good enough for me, and it will help me physically, I think, with my photography. And I like to be out as much as possible. I enjoy the outdoor time much more than I do, you know, indoor editing and so on. So I just want to see if the image quality is good enough. And yeah, that's it. I want to go on and try and find something to photograph. So I want to keep that bit as short as possible, but that's why I'm changing. And I've done my research, I've considered everything, and I'm thinking this may be potentially the best solution for me. It's a great camera for people who do their photography outdoors. It's got very good image stabilization. There's a lot of nice things about it. Some really nice lenses for wildlife photography, and some really nice lenses available for my landscape photography as well. So potentially it could be a good solution for my problem, but we'll see. So I've only got this OM-1 Mark II camera literally about 2 to 3 days ago, and all I've done so far is get the battery charged up. I've also got a spare battery, and I've had it on at home, you know, in the house, looking through the menu system, getting it all set up, and I've had a little play around with it in the garden. So this is the first time I'm out to do any landscape photography as I would typically do it. You spend a few hours outdoors, and I don't know if I'll get any good images that I'll think are really strong portfolio worthy images today. If I do, that's great, but it's definitely not about that. I'll take any good images that I get, but I just want to get a few images, and that's enough to let me have a real good look at the image quality. And when I say look at the image quality, what I want the camera to do for me is that if I view it full screen on, say, a 4K television or a monitor, or someone's looking at it, you know, much smaller, it doesn't really matter. It needs to look good across all that different platforms. And when I'm printing at my typical sizes, which is generally up to A3+, I want to look at the prints and think, you know, that's good, that's a good quality print, I'm really happy with that. Regardless of what camera I took it, I'm happy with that quality, and I'm happy to give that to a customer, or I'm happy to put it in my own wall. So that's really how I'm going to judge the quality of the camera. But as I say, it's my first shoot. I'm looking around, there's lots of nice heather, but I'm not really seeing anything, you know, that's worth taking the camera out for yet. I am here just to test it, but I do want to take good images if at all possible. So I'll keep going and see what I can find. So I've been walking along trying to find some scenes that would work with the beautiful heather. There's been a lot of patches of really nice purple heather at its peak, I would say, or very close to its peak. I can't imagine it getting much better. But it got incredibly overcast. and being in a woodland, there was no appealing light whatsoever, and any photographs would have looked incredibly dull and lifeless. However, as you can see now, the sun has come out, so things have changed dramatically. And I've also found this little open section, and I'm being very careful here because there's some new trees growing, and there's obviously the heather as well, which I don't want to damage. So I've been very careful not to damage that. I'm in quite a precarious spot. But I've found a beautiful scene just in front of me here. In my foreground and even off into the distance, there's lots of this amazing heather. Very, very vibrant colour. I can assure you I won't overemphasize it in my edit when you see the image. It really is vibrant, it's just beautiful actually. And then in front of me I've got an amazing view with there's a really nice tree just in front of me, and then off into the distance we've got some really atmospheric slopes, a nice sky, and yeah, just a beautiful view over the terrain in front of me. So I've got the camera set up, and obviously when it's your first time out with a camera, even though you've been messing around with it at home, you always learn new things and you're struggling a little bit to find things in the menus. But I've got the camera operational here, and the light is just amazing. It is really, really nice. And I've got some nice clouds actually at the moment as well, just passing off in the distance. So I'm going to ensure I'm focused where I want to be. And I've got the 2-second timer on. And that should hopefully make a nice photograph. So yeah, really, really pleased to have found this scene. As for the camera, yeah, it's doing everything that I want. A little bit of getting used to, for example, just here, when I've been sort of testing where I need to focus to ensure I can get everything sharp in one shot. It's been difficult for me to find, looking through the viewfinder and also in the rear screen, what would represent 100% view. So, you know, if you zoom in too much, your image is going to look blurry anyway. If I want to check if it's critically sharp, if you don't zoom in enough, it's probably going to look sharp where it possibly couldn't be. So trying to get these sort of things and familiar with them is a little challenge, but that'll obviously something I'm able to pick up very quickly. But obviously just moving from camera system to another, there's always little subtle differences that you need to get used to. But yeah, what a beautiful scene, and really, really fortunate with some of the light that I've got as well. So I'll show you this image, and I may have a look around and see if there's anything else that catches my eye. I'm really pleased with this image that I captured. While on location, I intended to talk more about what I was trying to achieve with the photograph, my hopes for it, how I saw the composition and so on. However, because it was my first on-location shoot with the camera and I'd only got it a few days ago, I hit a couple of issues just because I wasn't familiar with the camera. There were a couple of things I was trying to change or trying to achieve certain settings, and I couldn't find them, and it really distracted my attention away from the video. I'll talk more about that very shortly. I'd also intended to go and look for another composition, but it became incredibly overcast, and I just decided to head back because I had a long way to hike back. However, on the way back, the light broke through a little bit, and I saw this little scene about 10-15 minutes before the sun set. There was a little bit of light breaking through. Again, I was drawn to the heather, and I captured this image handheld. So I'm going to talk more about it and the other image and another image that I've captured on a separate day back home in my office. It's now been about a week and a half since I was on location, and I've had plenty of time to look at the images that I captured on that day. I've also been out for another shoot, so I've got a further image to show. So what I want to do now is really have a look in depth at the digital files of 3 photographs taken with the OM-1 Mark II and the 12 to 40mm lens. And I'm also going to have a look at a print in detail, and very importantly I'm going to come to a decision: is the OM-1 Mark II going to supplement my Nikon Z8 to be used at certain times, or is it going to completely replace my Nikon Z8 and I'm going to completely change systems? So we're going to come to a decision soon in this video. I want to talk first, just before looking at the digital images, about a couple of the issues I was having while photographing on location. You may have just heard me talk about that. So the first one, I think I mentioned it on location, I was just struggling to do what I wanted, which was hit a button which would instantly zoom into 100% on playback, so I could look at my image and know for sure if it was sharp or not. I'm going to have to look into that a bit more, but I think I can roughly figure out what's 100%, but it's something I'll investigate a bit further. But I don't think there's a way to do that I could see on location, so it took a little bit of time and distracted me away from my video looking into that. The other issue which confused me a bit and possibly took a bit more time on location is that when I was taking the shot that I spoke about in the video, the one with the tree and the nice heather and so on, I noticed that the histogram, there was a touch of clipping at the black side, so over to the left of the histogram. It was extremely minor. It was never going to be any sort of problem whatsoever, even on the JPEG. But I shoot in RAW, so I knew looking at the histogram it was never going to be an issue in my RAW file. But simply because I'm out first time with the camera learning it, I decided this is a great opportunity. I often bracket shots when I'm doing landscape photography. Let's do a bracket, take a few different exposures. So I went into the menu, took a little second, I found out how to do that. But when I hit my shutter button, I think it only took one image and it took it instantly. I believe I would have needed to hold down the shutter button to take the full set of bracketed images that I'd set up in the menu. But what was really perplexing me is that I had a 2-second timer turned on when I was taking single exposures, and as soon as I changed to bracketing there was no 2-second timer, and that got me a bit distracted. I was trying to figure this out, I was looking through the menu and I couldn't find a way to hit the shutter button on the camera, initiate a 2-second timer and then have it fire off all the bracketed shots that I wanted to take. So it's something I'm going to spend a bit more time looking into. However, my solution on location, which again took a bit of time and it distracted me from filming the video, is that I had my mobile phone with me, and fortunately I had the OM system app on it. So with a bit of effort I was able to get it to connect to my camera, and I was able to trigger the shutter via the camera, via my mobile phone rather. And this obviously eliminated any camera shake, and I was able to fire off the bracketed shots no problem using a remote release via my mobile phone. So that's what sort of got me distracted. Nothing really to do with the camera, just me learning it, my first time out with it. But overall, the user experience when I was out on that shoot and when I've been out since has been fantastic. I really like how the camera feels in my hands. I need to look into a couple of things just to get familiar with it, some of which I've just spoken about. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very enjoyable camera to use. Feels good in the hands, and I think that's really important. So let's take a look at the digital images. As I mentioned while on location, the purpose of me going on this journey with the camera on that first shoot was really to try and see how I feel about using it. I've no problems there. Take some images, look at their quality, and also see how the images look printed. So we're going to do all that now. And what I just want to say quickly before we get into this is that I'm always a bit skeptical of trying to analyze image quality through YouTube. So for example, when I'm editing this video and producing it for YouTube, there's going to be some compression takes place. Then YouTube will get my video and do further compression, and the quality really suffers. So I'm going to be very honest, and what I would advise is that if anything I say does not match what you see on your screen, go with what I'm saying rather than what you're seeing. Your monitor or whatever you're viewing it on, the size of the monitor, the quality, etc., could also influence how good or bad you think the images look. And of course the print that I show as well. So really it's only me with the actual print in front of me and looking at the images in my own monitor, it's going to see them in their full quality. So just keep that in mind. It's an unfortunate downside of YouTube, but it's nothing that I can really do anything about. So I want to start by looking at the image that I captured on the way back. And this was a nice little scene that I saw. It's not going to be my best image ever, but I definitely thought it was worth taking. And I think this is one area in which the OM-1 Mark II is going to excel. It's so convenient to use, it's light, it's little, you could probably carry it just round your neck happily all day or in a little pack. And the IBIS is fantastic as well, so it's really going to encourage me to take shots that I may otherwise have walked past. If I thought I needed to, you know, take a heavy backpack off my back and take out a tripod, sometimes there's scenes you're sort of thinking, is it worth it or not worth it? And it's just too much hassle to take them, especially if you're aware the sun's setting, you have a long hike back or whatever. So I think the freedom of creativity that the OM-1 Mark II offers is going to be really useful in certain situations. And yeah, I can imagine going on a long hike, and I don't want to shoot hundreds of photographs, but because it's so convenient, it's probably going to be much more fun and practical to take some shots, especially with a great IBIS that's built in, that I may not otherwise take if I'd been using my Nikon. So that's something I've noticed. But I've got the images in front of me here, and this one was shot handheld. I shot it at f8, which is not probably the optimal aperture for pure image sharpness, but there was no way I was going to get the immediate foreground in focus here in one exposure and one image. So I just shot it at f8. I was more interested in getting what was beyond the foreground sharp. And I shot it at 1/5 of a second and at the lowest recommended ISO of 200 on the OM-1 Mark II. Because I was able to shoot it at 1/5 of a second, I got a really nice look to the water in sections. Some of the flow of the water came out really nicely with that shutter speed. Because I was shooting handheld, it was so easy to make minor adjustments with composition. And when you half press the shutter button and IBIS engages, it locks down. It's just, the image locks. It's incredible looking through it. So it really helped me fine tune the composition. And looking at the image here in detail, I mean, the rocks on the river, the heather at the far side, there's so many fine details. I'm really impressed with the image. There's lots of detail in the tree bark and so on. And yeah, it just looks really, really good. Incredibly sharp image. Tons of detail. Editing the file was no problem, obviously shot at ISO 200. There's lots of flexibility to do anything that I wanted with the image, but my edit is a realistic representation of what I saw. So yeah, not the best image in the world, but definitely one that I'm glad I captured. So the next image that I want to take a look at was shot a few days later than the video footage that you've been watching in this particular video. And again, it was one that I shot handheld, an image that I quite like. It was shot at f6.3. And because I shot this one in really nice light and the heather itself was very vibrant, This is again a very gentle edit. I didn't need to do much editing to any of these files, to be fair, but a gentle edit got this scene looking like how I remembered it, and the colours were very vibrant, so I've tried to make that as accurate as possible. And yeah, again, just looking at this image, I was really impressed with the image quality. I mean, there's so much fine detail. Important to me is how foliage looks in my images, and also, you know, grass, heather, etc., leaves. The grass and heather looks really realistic, and even way off in the distance of this image there's some small trees, and I was quite surprised at the detail and the image quality of what was way off in the distance of this image. You know, you're sometimes a little bit wary of moving to a smaller sensor. You wonder how will the detail be, but there's more than enough detail in this image file for me. I was really pleased with it. So again, shot handheld, the IBIS locks it down, and yeah, it just looks really good. Shot at f6.3, fairly wide from memory, and yeah, it let me get the depth of field that I wanted. So yeah, really pleased with this image as well. The gloves are on, so that means it's almost time to have a look at a print, and in just a second we're going to have a look at this print here. This is the image that you saw me capture on location in the video, and I'm really pleased with this image. First, I want to talk about the digital file. So having a look at the digital file, I'm really pleased with it. Again, the scene was very vibrant. I think I mentioned that on location, so I've tried to do a very faithful edit to that. To be fair, the raw file required minimal editing, and I'm really pleased with the image quality. There is so much detail in this scene. I mean, the main tree that features just to the left of center in the image, the tree bark is incredibly detailed. The heather is incredibly detailed. The distant mountains, I can see fine detail on them. And yeah, I mean, it looks like a realistic representation of what I saw. So I'm really pleased with it. Off camera, just at home, I've done some experimenting, shooting in high ISO as well. I talked about how you can see a lot of files online and do your own research on that, but I did a little bit of experimenting at home. And what has struck me first of all is that, one, I'm genuinely surprised with the digital files. They are, I think, a bit better quality than I actually expected I was going to get out of this camera. Now, I'm obviously using a good lens for all the shots that you've seen. They've been shot with a 12 to 40mm lens. I think the latest version of that lens. And they've produced files that I'm really happy with. So the files have slightly surpassed my expectations. And for the little bits of testing I've done at home, you know, shooting at dark scenes in higher ISO, I did a lot of research into that before purchasing the camera, but I feel that the look of the noise and the quantity of the noise and so on is certainly fine for my needs. And with today's post-processing software such as the denoise feature in Lightroom, and you can get other packages as well, I don't really feel it's going to be any sort of issue for me. More potentially of an issue, you could say, for wildlife, because you're generally going to be using higher ISOs. I can't see it being an issue whatsoever for my landscape photography. But yeah, I've been shooting at some high ISOs at home as well, and you know, at the ISO levels I expect to be using for the type of wildlife that I do, I don't think it's going to be an issue. So overall, the digital files, I'm very happy with them. They're more than good enough for my needs, and yeah, I don't see any issue with that whatsoever. So those are the digital files, and when you're purely talking about digital files for my needs, for being happy with viewing them on my own monitor, for how they edit, for how they would look on my website and my YouTube videos, on social media, etc. They are more than good enough for my needs. I'm really pleased with them, and I would be happy to work with these digital files. Those are the digital files. We're going to talk about printing a bit more in just a second. But before I go on to that, I just want to quickly mention that I try to stay away from heated camera debate as much as possible. I think it can get quite heated, and yeah, it's not a route I want to go down in this video at all, but I think it can be quite fiercely debated if there's any advantage in terms of size and weight going to a micro four thirds system over going to a modern mirrorless full frame system. So a lot of people say the modern mirrorless full frame systems are so light and little, and the lenses are so light and little, that there's no benefit going to micro four thirds. I did a little bit of research into my own needs, and I considered the focal length lenses that I use in my full frame camera and my own needs. I'm very familiar with what I need to use and what I like to use, and what I would potentially replace it with on the OM-1 Mark II if I was to completely switch systems. And I don't want to go into it in huge detail, but just as an example, if I'm out doing wildlife, typically I'll have my Z8 body, and I like the Z800mm attached, and to be able to fit it into my bag so I can pull it out ready to use, and I'll reverse the hood and fit it into my bag. I'll often carry as well my Z100 to 400mm lens, so if I need a shorter focal length I can switch to that. Doing some research, I found that, you know, obviously to have the Z800 with that set up in my bag, I need a very large, heavy bag. I could switch to the OM-1 Mark II, buy a lens or lenses to cover my needs, and I can switch to a much smaller backpack, so I could probably save at least 1.5 kilograms on the backpack alone. There's also the size of the backpack, you know, just fitting it in and getting it out of your car, walking through woodlands, crouching under branches. My huge backpack often catches things. So I think there's a simpler, easier way of life and a lighter, smaller way of life in terms of photography using micro four thirds. I looked at lots of options across various systems, and yeah, I feel I could purchase a set of lenses that lets me do everything, carry much less weight in terms of the camera gear itself, use smaller backpacks when they're viable, and yeah, I can definitely see some benefits there that could help the problems I talked about in the video, you know, getting some pain and discomfort carrying so much heavy gear. So I just wanted to quickly mention that, but now it's time to have a look at the print. Here is the print, and I'm incredibly happy with it. It's printed on an A3 plus sheet of paper, so that's 19 inches by 13 inches. I haven't cut the paper at all, and when I'm printing I always leave a border around it for handling and framing. So this is how I would print on a sheet of paper at this size. The image file is the edited RAW file, and it has not been cropped at all, so the composition is exactly as it was framed in camera. That's how I would typically shoot. My only cropping I would do in a landscape image typically is for aspect ratio, but this is the native aspect ratio and the full composition as it came out of the camera. So in terms of the quality of the print, I've managed to get the colours looking as it appears on my monitor. Any difference you see between the digital image and the video footage showing this print is simply due to lighting and the colour of the video and so on. But it's come out incredibly lifelike as how I remember the scene, and the quality I am more than happy with. This print is one I will put in my own wall. I'd be happy to sell this as a print. If I was buying a print myself, I would be more than happy with this quality. It is really, really good. It's sharp in all the corners. Obviously the sky, we can't see anything, but the digital file and the printed file, it's sharp in all the corners, sharp the whole way through, and there is tons of detail. I mean, the bark, even in this smaller tree here, there is tons of fine detail. I can see lots of detail on the ground and these distant trees, on the mountains. Tons of detail on the bark of the main tree. The heather all looks incredibly lifelike, and overall I think it's a very, very good quality print. Now, I'm not going to show it in this video, but just for reference I think it would be worth mentioning that in my office here I have got tons of prints laying around. I've got some that I've printed from my Nikon Z8, and I was just having a look at them alongside this one. A different scene of course, but some similar scenes with, you know, a tree in it or whatever. And the image quality on both is just the same. At a print this size, that's what I would expect really. So I'm really, really pleased. I don't think the quality of my prints is going to suffer at all at the sizes I print using this camera. Now, occasionally I do print either because I've got a request or for myself at a size larger than A3+. I need to get that done from a print company because my printer can't print at that size. If I want to do that, there are multiple options available to me. If it was a perfectly still landscape scene, the OM-1 Mark II has got two, I believe, high-res modes. I think one's a 50 megapixel handheld mode, and it's also got an 80 megapixel mode for use in a tripod. I think it's very condition dependent. The scene would need to be perfectly still, but that's an option. There is of course modern software to help you resize your images, which can give excellent quality. Or considering the print, a larger print will be viewed at larger distances, the print quality could be dropped a little bit. But for me and my needs, this camera, I think, in terms of printing, will do everything that I require. I'm really, really pleased with this print. And yeah, this one's going on my own wall. I need to make a decision, and that decision is going to be made in the next few seconds. Am I going to completely change systems, or is the OM-1 Mark II going to supplement my Nikon Z8? I want to touch briefly on something. There is so much more detail, and I could go into so much more detail about all the research and things I have pondered in my mind about switching systems or keeping the Z8. Many of you will be thinking about these things, and I just think it will make the video too long, too boring, and probably, you know, could open up too many arguments if I start discussing every little detail. For example, could you have more scope to crop for wildlife photography on a full frame camera? High ISO noise performance for wildlife, have you done any detailed testing of that? What about backgrounds when you're photographing wildlife? If I just think about any of these topics and so much more, I could speak about them for a long time. So I really don't want to nitpick and get into the finest of details. Just know I've considered anything and everything that I can think about. But anyway, keeping it to the point, it's all about image quality, it's all about printing, it's all about size, weight, convenience, and is the system good enough for my needs? And my answer is that I am going to completely switch to the OM-1 Mark II and over time build up a collection of lenses. I have made my decision, the Nikon Z8 is going. I'm very much an outdoor person. I'm an outdoor photographer. I love landscape photography. I love wildlife photography. I love going on long hikes, be they flatter terrain, mountains. You'll know all this if you've watched some of my previous videos. And I feel the OM-1 Mark II is the perfect camera for me to do those things, especially as someone who is suffering a little bit with issues that I talked about in this video. I sometimes don't know if I want to do wildlife photography or landscape photography when I go out, because I love them both so much. And I think with the OM-1 system, I would be able to carry lenses that would let me do both. I think it's very flexible, and if I'm only going out to do one, I can do it incredibly lightweight compared to what I'm used to and still get the image quality that I need. So for my needs, the OM-1 Mark II ticks all the boxes. I've got the image quality that I want, and I've got the smaller system, which in my analysis will let me save weight and size and so on. So I have made my decision. I just want to say that if you watch my YouTube videos regularly, or you're intending watching any of my future videos, you will see there comes a point when I'm using nothing but the OM-1 Mark II. I have a backlog of videos that I need to edit. I've been incredibly busy with my photography, and I've got a ton of content recorded, some of it wildlife, and you will know if you're a wildlife photographer, sometimes you can come home with thousands of images. So those videos are going to take a lot of time for me to edit, the photographs, the video themselves, all the culling, etc, etc. So in the future, there will be a number of videos go up where I'm still shooting Nikon equipment, but when this video is live, I will most likely not own any Nikon equipment because I'm completely getting rid of the lot and switching to the OM-1 Mark II. So I just wanted to throw that in briefly. If you look at a future video after this one and you see that I'm using Nikon equipment, it's because it's been recorded months ago. It just takes a lot of time and effort for me to edit these videos and photographs to the standard that I want before I put them on my YouTube channel. But I'm really excited for the future. I'm excited to move systems because I've been really impressed with what I've seen and tested so far. So my solution is maybe not the right one for everyone, but I feel great and positive and really sure that I've made the right decision for me. I do hope you've enjoyed watching this video and maybe learned something or gave you food for thought in your own photography. But whatever, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it, and I hope I will see you in my future videos.